Hello and welcome to the Thursday, June 7th, 2012 Audit Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We need to review and approve the minutes from last meeting dated April 5th, 2012.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Rolfing.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions or concerns? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get into our first audit review report regarding overtime. And do we want to set it up, Tim, or
Sure.
Just go ahead?
Yep. This audit of overtime was done looking at just the fire department. We did not look at the city as a whole. But just as some background for information on overtime, you can look on page 2 of the audit report. It talks about that the city in 2011 had $1.8 million paid out to employees for overtime. Just as an idea on what that means for the city in regards to the whole entire budget, for 2011 we budgeted $307 million in expenditures. So that's roughly about 0.59% of the budget that we paid out. So even though that 1.8 looks like a large number, if you're just looking at that, in regards to the budget as a whole, it's a very small part of it. And as you go down the report, it should be up on your screens hopefully, you can see that we got a graph there of all the departments, and overtime has fallen over the last 3 years for sure, and it's been trending that way in the last 5 or so, in both the budget as well as in the actual. Then when we get into specifically the fire department itself, you'll see that in 2011 there was $258,000 of overtime paid out to the fire employees. One thing is, as we've laid out in the report, that we caution with that number, it is higher than the previous year, 2010. However, in 2011, the fire department sent personnel down to Dakota Dunes for the flood recovery effort there, and that had 34 firefighters going down there, and these employees, because of the nature of what they had to do, only a select amount were eligible to go down there. So with that, they had, because of the schedules and everything over that time period, it added up to overtime. That's the only thing they could do there. So, but if you go down then into the graph, you'll see that for fire, they did drop significantly from 2009, and it is even below that in 2011, and I would guess in 2012 with the efforts they've made in changing the way they schedule, I would anticipate that that'll be significantly less than that as well. As we go down into the report, we've added some data in there and some graphs in regards to some of the other top overtime taking departments, however you want to say that. We've shown the 5 years for these 10 departments, and as you can see, the police department actually has the most overtime of all the city departments, which, with the amount of employees they have, kind of makes sense. When you get into some of the other departments, they don't have near as many employees as both police and fire, so those numbers you would expect to be quite less as they are. So then as we get into the actual results of the audit and things that we did, the objectives, as you can see on page 4, the 4 objectives there: to obtain an understanding of the management controls of overtime, determine when and how employees earn overtime, verify the process of how it's approved and recorded, and then evaluate the actual to the budgeted overtime for all departments. We did those things, and as what we found from the audit was we didn't find anything glaring, so we have no recommendations to report. On the last page, you'll see some additional graphs just to lay out the information in some other ways, so you can take a look at those as you wish. that ends my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Tim? Councilor Entenmann.
Just a quick one. This actually just refers to specifically to the cash overtime pays, right? Was there any reference brought up to the flex time, or can you explain? I know in police, for example, sometimes when there's different events to work, they ask for volunteers. It's my understanding it's either flex time or they can compile time, or can you enlighten us onto that a little bit?
You know, we didn't actually look into any of the, if there was flex time that was used or anything like that. We just looked specifically at the overtime procedures and what would constitute someone getting overtime. So I guess I can't speak to whether or not employees of fire, get flex time and how that would work.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Thank you.
I think when the numbers are reported on the graphs, that's actual cash. Yeah.
Yep. Good enough.
But that's right. We were focusing mainly on fire department. Now for next year, we may, for our audit plan for next year, we may consider looking at overtime in other departments to see how it was authorized and approved and recorded and that sort of thing. So,
Councilor Aguilar.
Was this one of the audits that was recommended by someone specific, or just?
yes, that was when we asked for input from directors. The fire chief had asked that we do this audit of his department. And as Tim reported, we found their controls they have very good controls in place.
Good.
So,
Councilor Rolfing.
Tim, do you know, I guess would be a better way to put it, what kind of actions they put into play to reduce, you said they've reduced this dramatically over what, 3-5 years?
Yep.
What kind of actions have they taken to reduce this? And, it's still a big number. What could it have been?
I guess I'm probably defer to Rich. I don't know if you're more familiar with that. I guess we didn't look back on what their.
I think it started with the previous chief, Chief Hill, and continued with Chief Sedaris, where they kind of looked at how they were scheduling people and kind of were thinking outside the box. And do we need to schedule people this way? And can we do it this way and reduce our overtime? And
Okay.
The trend is, they've been successful in reducing that amount. And then the one anomaly, of course, was last year with Dakota Dunes, and they had the kind of spike. Mm-hmm. However, a lot of that was reimbursed from FEMA at the end of the year. So it wasn't necessarily the taxpayers of Sioux Falls paying for the overtime for the guys to go down to Dakota Dunes. So,
Thank you.
Tim, I have a question on the graph that showed I think it's up from this one that's on the screen now. One of the first graphs you showed.
Yep, that'd be this one.
I'm sorry, the next one then. Fire, there you go. So am I understanding it right that the big gap here in 11 is because of that flood? And
Correct.
And then the city was reimbursed?
They were, their actual overtime, if you were to take the Dakota Dunes effort out, they would have still been over their budgeted amount. And if you look in the information in the paragraph previous to that, I believe that's where I have it, they had 4 years where they were actually over budget in that category. However, as a whole, they were under budget for their entire budgeted expense.
Very good. I was just, I think like Councilor Rolfing, there's just some, and this beyond your scope, but it's it seems a little funny that we would budget so much for overtime and not be on a path to eliminate it. But it's probably just part of the deal with emergency services to have.
Yeah, they, in looking at it, about the only way that you can get around overtime is to add employees.
Right.
And, scheduling wise, I don't know if that would make sense to do just in the effort to get rid of overtime. So
That's a question for HR someday when we're talking to him. We can ask him. All right, Tim, anything else you need to add or want to add? All right, very good. Thank you, Tim. Now, we need to just accept the report, and That's all we're doing when we vote to accept it.
Right, we
So
just
there's-
need a motion and a second.
in essence, there's no other changes that are needed to it or follow-up. Yes, Councilor Olfing?
You know, I'm looking at this and saying we're spending $2 million a year in overtime,
Right?
basically, right?
Yep.
Has anybody done a study, or we looked at this and said, would it be more economical if we hired some people?
Well, right, like we were just maybe suggesting, is that
Yeah.
be a great question for Bill O'Toole to do us, to ask him that question. And
Right.
have him tell us,
I'm sorry, I probably wasn't listening hard enough when you were doing that, because I was looking at that same thing, probably, I'm just a step behind you.
No, you were a step ahead, actually, and I was just catching up, so you were there. It's just, I think we need to have Bill O'Toole weigh in on it for us.
Yeah, when can we, how do we get that done? When can we get that done? And is it appropriate for us to do it, or for another committee, or for the whole council, or what?
I think if any one of us just wanted to ask him, and then get it brought up at an informational or somehow,
Okay.
that'd be the best way.
I might add that we
Oh, yes.
will, at the leadership meeting tomorrow, at the director's meeting, I could pass this on to him and tell him that there were some questions on that, give him some time to pull it together. And
Perfect. Very good. Thanks, Councilor Entman. Anything else? Councilor Aguilar?
Well, and also, I think during the budgeting process, we
right
really
here
need
now.
to take a look at it.
All right, very good. Okay, Tim, thank you. So we'll take a motion to accept that report.
So moved, Aguilar.
second, Entman.
We have a motion to accept and second the,
That's the screen.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the screen. All right, so we'll, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, that's accepted. Thanks, Tim. We'll move on to the next audit report with the Wayne Township Agreement for the Fire and Rescue Services with Rich Oaksville.
Yes, this was was not on our annual audit plan. This was a special request that came to the committee at our last meeting from Councilor Karski. And just to make a very brief summary, and then we'll take questions. And we also have some representatives from Wayne Township here, I think, would want to address the committee. Back in 2005, the City of Sioux Falls entered into an agreement with the Wayne Township, which is the township located west of the Sioux Falls city limits, to provide fire rescue services. They were planning to disband their volunteer fire department. And so this agreement was entered into, and services have been provided. And in the agreement, there was a formula worked out for figuring out the annual charge. And basically, it was a little complicated, but it was basically trying to figure out the property tax portion of the fire operating budget, and then kind of comparing their population to Sioux Falls, and then coming up with a number that was reflective of the property tax portion of their budget, of the fire budget, and then sending them a bill accordingly. There were several complications in this. There was, in the original agreement, there's no mention of the two revenue sources that the township has for fire services, the fire tax levy and the fire insurance premium reversion. And then there was an attempt early in the agreement to have a revision or an amendment to the agreement, and that was actually drafted, and I saw a copy of that to kind of make that formula a little bit clearer. The problem was it was never ratified. The mayor didn't sign it. The board, the Wayne Township board didn't sign it, but it was sort of, perhaps you call it a gentleman's agreement. We'll kind of figure the bill this way, and that's kind of the way it was done for a number of years, even though it really didn't match the original agreement, and so that was a complication. So the main dispute comes down to, I think, that getting credit for this fire insurance premium tax, which was not addressed in the agreement. We were giving them credit for that fire tax levy. Back in 2005, or early in the agreement, there was a letter sent to the county auditor saying, instead of sending that check to the Wayne Township, please send it to the City of Sioux Falls. And then when the fire person would figure the bill, they give a credit for that amount, that dollar amount, and come up with a net charge. So that fire insurance premium tax is about was about $4,000 a year, and that wasn't really given a dollar for dollar credit each year, as the fire tax levy was. So that's kind of one of the disputes. The Wayne Township supervisor would want credit for that money. The problem that we saw, that amendment was never ratified. The original agreement didn't really talk about that specifically. So what we're proposing is a compromise on credit for prior premium tax. We suggested going back 3 years. And there was also some misapplication of that fire tax levy, so we concurred with what the board supervisor, his number on that. So we came up with a number, and we suggested a recommendation that the city attorney's office provide somebody to negotiate with the township board. And first of all, come up with a number for prior credits, and we suggested a number, kind of a compromise. And then the second thing was, going forward, get something simpler. Either, you can do it several ways. You could do a flat rate per year. We suggested doing a flat rate per service call. For example, if they have 35 calls in a year, that you agree that each call was $1,100, just to throw out a number and figure out the bill that way. Something very simple. So that's what we suggested. The fire chief, his written replies at the back of the report, where he agreed with that, to get a representative from the city attorney's office to begin negotiations with the Wayne Township Board of Supervisors. So that's basically it. And we have, I believe, Mr. Doyle from the Wayne Township Board. I think he would like to address the committee.
I think that'd be probably better before we go into discussion to have Mr. Doyle. Whoever you'd like to come and address the audit, you can both, sure, come, whatever you'd like. Just to be fair and upfront, you should know that the function of the audit committee is really just to analyze the process. This body cannot make a deal or negotiate a contract of any sort, so just so you're aware.
I understand that.
Okay.
A.J. Swanson. My address is 27452 482nd Avenue, Canton. I'm an attorney, and I was asked late yesterday to represent Wayne Township. And so I don't have a whole lot of history with this particular contract, but I have worked on fire protection contracts before in Lincoln County. And I happen to be the clerk of my own township where I live, so I have some understanding of the travails that Wayne Township would have. By law, every township has to contract with a certified fire department. Apparently this is a one-of-a-kind situation, because if I understand Wayne Township's situation correctly, it is the only township which contracts with Sioux Falls Fire Rescue for their fire protection. Now, I'm not going to belabor my comments other than to say that if I understand the auditor's proposal, that we're not foreclosing our discussion on his proposed compromise, and that we will reserve that for a future date, at which time hopefully we will come up with a new formula for assessments going forward, then I'm fine with the audit report the way it's written. I just simply didn't want to foreclose, by not being here today and being heard, our right to say that the entire history of the fire insurance premium tax, since that really is a return of premium that is paid by the Wayne Township homeowners and property owners, should be considered throughout the entire operating history of the agreement, not the limitation of 3 years. And so if my understanding is correct, that we'll meet again in another day with the city attorney's office, I will look forward to that opportunity. So,
Yes, you are right, and what will have to happen here is that this body will accept this report as a good report. It'll move on to the full council as a report to them, And it's from that point that the council will need to instruct the city attorney and or others to contact you and negotiate an agreement that's appropriate, because I think the council will find that it's out of order and we need to do something. I think that's fair to say, but again, that'd be up to the full body of the council.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. Thank you. All right, any questions back to Rich on this report? It's a little complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated, and it was sort of doomed from the beginning. When you looked at the formula that they came up with in the original contract, they have a number in there that it seems like nobody's quite sure where that number came from, and when you kind of, okay, what is this number? And you just can't make sense of it. And the people that probably originally knew about the contract are since retired and probably don't remember exactly where that number came from. And then the fact that the amendment, which maybe would have cleared things up, was never officially ratified, so that was a complication too. So.
And this came to the body through Councilor Karski, right?
Yes, I believe, Mr. Doyle, had you asked Mr. Karski, is that how that came about, the request for Mr. Karski to?
Yeah, he arranged a meeting with the fire chief and the administrative chief earlier on, and got into the discussion of it. He recommended that
Go this way.
go this way.
Perfect.
I started an audit myself and presented on some numbers, and then
Okay. Well, very good. I'm glad to see it kind of progress this way, that it clearly was an identified problem, and the audit committee auditors found issues with it as well, and hopefully we can clear it up with some, proper management and terms that are fair to everybody. Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Entman.
There's one question. The compromise, Rich, is that a suggested compromise by you and your department then? Is that correct?
Yes. I suggested, I gave him a starting point, or, go with this number. But obviously, when you negotiate, it's whatever the two sides decide on. But certainly going forward, we want to have something that's really defined and clear to everybody, so we don't have this sort of thing going forward. And either side could drop out of this agreement. I don't think either side wants to do that. As far as I know, we don't want to leave them without a service. I don't think they want to have a contract with T or Hartford or some other volunteer department. And over time, I think what's going to happen is, as the city keeps expanding going west, we're going to be annexing more and more of the township. So perhaps in 20 years it won't be an issue. I don't know. So.
Right. I think the method would be to the auditors make a recommendation, but certainly would leave it to somebody else to probably
Let the attorneys handle. I agree.
Yeah, somebody to make it the appropriate agreement. Any other questions on this one? Yeah, it's a. Well, I'm glad we can probably maybe just figure it out, I guess, if anything. All right, so I need a motion to accept this report unless there's other questions. We have a motion to accept it and a second.
Aguilar.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We accept that report. Thank you, Rich. And thank you for coming. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, which is an update on filling the internal auditor vacancy.
Yes, we've had a vacancy since, I believe, October, when Jeff Weber had retired. I'd like to introduce Danette Schumacher, if she would come up and just introduce herself. Danette has, I want to say, 18 years experience in internal auditing, and she's a certified internal auditor. So,
welcome, Danette. A few questions for you.
Yes.
No, I don't. I was just. You have. I think we've seen your resume, but has everybody on the audit committee seen the resume? Anything else you want to add about how excited you are? Or
I'm very excited about joining the internal audit team here at the city. I'm looking forward to it.
she'll be starting on Monday, June 18th.
Yes.
So, okay.
In about a week.
All right, I'll try to stay official here, so I won't ask you any other questions. Well, welcome.
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to getting to know you better.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, Rich.
Okay.
Move on to open discussion. Any items to cover on the?
We got what about number 6 and 7 there on the agenda?
I had open position. Okay, it's not open discussion.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go on to 7 then, Rich. You talk about the cost estimates for making the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline available.
Okay. The cost estimates for making that available to the public, just to give you background, we've had that fraud hotline for about 5 years, and it's fairly inexpensive. It's $1,750 a year, and it's only available to city employees. That was the original decision back in around 2007 when we discussed it with the city council at the time, just to make it available to the employees. If we were to open it up to the citizens, as was mentioned last audit committee meeting, it would be $10,000 a year, and that would include 300 telephone reports. If they went over 300, then it would be $32 a report, past that threshold, and that would also include 250 web reports with an overage at $5 a web report. So it'd be significantly more money than we're paying now. Right now, with that $1,750 per year, we average about, I would say, 2 to 3 calls a year from employees on various topics. I was in Tempe, Arizona about a month ago for the local government's auditors national conference. I talked to some other auditors from other municipalities. They did caution. Some said don't do it. Others have done it. For example, the City of Toronto, I sat in on an hour presentation from the City of Toronto, which is much, much, much bigger than Sioux Falls, and they have a dedicated staff that handles their calls, and they're open to the public, and they get hundreds of calls a year. I did talk to also our representative of the network, the provider of the service, and he said what they can do if the decision is reached to open it up to the public, they can prepare a script for the person that answers the call, so that if it's inappropriate, say a person is calling about a pothole, they would simply say, well, the purpose of this line is fraud, waste, and abuse. Here is the number, the pothole hotline for the city. Or they could screen your call so that I wouldn't have my mailbox filling up every day with reports about potholes or something that should be reported to a different city department. So they can help us with that if we went that way. And as far as advertising it, what other cities do is they put it on the city website. They would put it on we could put on channel 16. You put the number out there, and the purpose of it, obviously. So I guess it starts with this committee, and I would imagine that would be a full council decision.
Councilor Aguilar.
Did you get any kind of indication from those that had the fraud hotline open to the community, the amount of money that they estimate that they recover or save from?
Yeah, some of the larger cities will report that. They'll report every year to their governing body how many calls they received, what categories the calls were, and any cost recoveries. And sometimes they do find very legitimate leads, so to speak, or tips that lead to, sometimes prosecution, sometimes cost recoveries. It's a matter for that agent, the person or office that's receiving the calls to have to sort through and find the gems in there. Sometimes there isn't enough to investigate. Sometimes there isn't anything to investigate. And other times there really is something to investigate and does result in action. So
Go ahead.
So does it usually sit within an audit function?
it is common that way. In the larger city like the City of Toronto, they have a basically investigative unit that is assigned to that, and the person that gave the presentation in Tempe was actually an attorney, and it was her job to kind of lead that office, and she had, fraud investigators and other people, but obviously we're not the scale of that sort of situation. So,
Audit Committee Member Forbes.
On the cost or the per call costs, if they were receiving calls that were screened by your script saying that someone calling and complaining about potholes or something trivial like that that isn't really the purpose of that line, does that count against your credit of 300 calls per year?
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to ask, but yeah, I'd have to ask. Because I imagine if you didn't advertise it correctly, people might start using it when we have other hotlines available, you know, for code enforcement or potholes. So that'd be another additional question for our provider to.
Councilor Intiman.
You know, it would seem to me that the fraud hotline, it's like at the federal level, if there's an insider that knows that there's something wrong and files a complaint, and it would seem to me that it makes sense that a person on the inside that might be an employee of the company would be more privy to information in their respective departments or the areas where they work if there is fraud or abuse or whatever going on. The size of our city, the receptiveness of our press to get out and answer, you know, delve into complaints that citizens might have. I'm not sure that it would be $10,000 that would be well spent at this time. I'm not discounting the fact that at some point in the future, if the size of Sioux Falls might help to, maybe it would become more necessary. But it seems to me that the question that we asked, the ability of our audit group now to do these spot checks that they seem to do, and actually react to requests by department directors, such as the fire chief, to take a look into some of these avenues to see if things are kosher on their part. I think we've got great cooperation on the part of the city, and I'm not so sure that we really need to spend the money to do this.
I can tell you originally 5 years ago, I think one of the arguments made for not opening up the hotline was that citizens can report things without retaliation. They can talk to elected officials. They can call the mayor's office. They can go to the press. There's other avenues. And so at that time, I think the decision was, well, let's just make it open to employees who are vulnerable to retaliation to give them that anonymous reporting mechanism. So there's arguments certainly on both sides of this.
Have you found with the couple of calls that we've had, you say you get a couple of calls a year, Rich?
Yeah, probably 2 to 3.
Yeah, have we, when you've looked into those, have you found abuses? Yeah,
I would say, you know, and common to the experience of other municipalities, about maybe a third, roughly, of your calls were what we call certainly worthy of investigation, and that there was wrongdoing. And there's been, I think, at least one employee that was terminated based on a fraud hotline call.
And that's over a period of 5 years, you
Yeah,
say?
over 5 years, we're probably, you know, 2 to 3 a year, and maybe a third result in, yeah, there was some wrongdoing, something, you know, maybe not a termination perhaps, but maybe somebody needed to be addressed. Not to do that, it was, you know, depending on, but sure. As far as identifying a cost recovery, I can't say that we've had any cost recoveries based on the, you know, on that.
I would add that I've had those calls to me regarding something that was going on, and sometimes it turns into, like you said, Councilor Intiman, when it comes from the public, they may not be as well as informed as an individual who's on the inside, and it can also then lend itself to political positioning and or attacks. That's a tough place for the auditors, the people working this hotline, to determine, but I myself can't seen the value of spending the $10,000 either, but that's just my thoughts, you know, and see a couple others kind of shaking their heads as well. It was good to know. I think the purpose was to figure out how far away we were from spending the extra money and what that was. And
certainly, if the decision is made to do that, this is the time to do it, because we start compiling the budget here in the summer, and we'd want to adjust our budget accordingly. But
yeah, seeing not any real strong interest, I think we'll leave that alone unless somebody else brings it up.
Well, then I do have a question. So this is within your budget, the $1,750?
Yes, it's a line item under, I believe, maybe consultant service. I think we put it in the same line item as the external audit fee. It's we just.
Okay, thank you.
I do believe there's value in that, and I do believe that we need to continue the employee hotline, and I do believe there's value in that. We need to continue that.
Okay, very good, Rich. I was jumping ahead, and so the open position on the audit committee. You want to talk about that at all?
Joe Marsh in February had stepped down from the audit committee, so we have a vacancy. It's currently unfilled, so.
So yes, if you know of somebody who would like to participate, and as we have with members Forbes and Epigard, people in the accounting and or the auditing business, and I don't know what other parameters we would set on them, but
Yeah, just there's no specific, they don't have to be a CPA, although our past and present outsiders have been CPAs, but there's no requirement in the ordinance for that. It's just somebody that has some expertise in that area and has an interest in public service. So.
okay, very good. So keep your eyes open. We can function without it, but
Sometimes, you know, as far as getting a quorum for the meeting, you know, we need 4 people, and I think we're at 5 today. So sometimes it's good to have all the positions filled, but certainly we can do business.
okay, very good. Now we'll move on to open discussion then. Anybody have anything that they'd like to talk about or have considered?
I do, unless somebody wants to speak first.
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, I just have I can get through this pretty quickly. Next committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 2nd. You should have that on your schedules already since we sent that out. But I have been assisting the new city auditor in Rapid City. His name is Kellen Kelly. He started about 3 weeks ago with working for the city council in Rapid City, sharing some information, just general assistance. So he's appreciated that. I plan to be meeting with the directors as a group and individually. We have a fraud risk assessment on our plate this year, and so I'll need to kind of, I was hoping to meet at their weekly meeting and then have individual meetings. And then also as we prepare the 2013 annual audit plan, we like to do just kind of an overall risk assessment meeting with directors, you know, going through questions. So just to let you know, I'll try and schedule myself for one of their weekly meetings to kind of introduce that, and then I'll schedule individual meetings if that's okay with the audit committee. So.
Very good.
And then I have one other thing, well, 2 more things. Just appreciate the permission to go down to Arizona for the national conference. I got a lot of good ideas. There's about 300 local government auditors there from all across North America. Lots of good ideas, lots of good presentations, good time to network with people from small cities and larger cities. And also, when I was looking at there's at least one resolution and one ordinance that establishes this committee and our office, and I think we need to review that soon. There's references to the lead auditor, yours truly, having secondary reporting to the city clerk, and that's changed with our new org chart. So probably need to clean that up, and also look at anything else that we need to. You know, just kind of look at that. We haven't changed it since 2007, so we probably need to look at that ordinance and that resolution. So probably for our next audit committee meeting, I'll probably have some suggestions that we can discuss and hopefully get that done this year. Yeah, I'll work with Jim David on that so we can get that going. So.
Okay, that's all sounds good. Any questions or any other discussion items, anything? Okay. Very good. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn if
So move, Aguilar.
we have a motion made and
Seconded.
seconded. All those to favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. We are